Hello and welcome to the Selling's Creative Podcast, a podcast exploring creativity's role in sales and business. I'm your host, Brad Eather, a digital communications sales strategist, helping established businesses and sales teams sell on social. Now, before we start, I just want to acknowledge a small milestone in the podcast's history. We've officially reached 10 episodes, which surprisingly, puts us in the top 25% of podcasts. Over that time, if you've been following along, we've learned a hell of a lot from some really fantastic minds, and I feel really humbled that within our first episode, Selling Creative has been acknowledged by Australian Business Journal in the top 10 business podcasts to watch out for in 2025. So for those who have been listening along, I just want to say thank you, and if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, do so now so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. My next guest is a very well-traveled sales trainer, training over 10,000 sales professionals across 37 countries. He's a wearer of orange hats, a 3 times author, of which we'll be talking about his most recent book today, Ethical Selling. And more recently, he's had a brief moment of virality as a parody rapper. So welcome to the show, Fred Copestake.
Believe that in the order of importance you've put wearing orange hats above writing 3 books. That's funny. It kind of sets the tone. I can see where we're going now.
Yeah. So now, Fred, I mentioned in the intro there that you're quite well traveled. And I just wanted to ask you, how many times have you been to Argentina?
Argentina. 1, 2, 3, 4, I think.
4. All right.
Once as a rugby ref. So first trip there was nothing to do with business. It was there to ref rugby. So yeah, I think 4.
Well, believe it or not, I know we're a sales podcast, but I actually want to talk about the first time that you were there as a rugby referee, because both you and I are both passionate rugby fans. And the thing that I wanted to ask you about is the refereeing part, because if anyone follows rugby union, it's an interesting role. The role of a referee in rugby union, they interpret laws. There's no rules in rugby. And they talk almost exclusively through captains. What I wanted to ask you is, what skills or lessons do you think that being a referee has taught you about communicating to leaders or leadership in general?
It's interesting. Actually, when you were talking about doing that in Argentina, something that struck me or reminded me of was that the Spanish word for referee is dirigir, which is actually to direct. So you direct a game because you're applying the laws to make sure that the stuff that needs to happen is going to happen, which was a learning I got from there. And actually, now you've asked the question, it's probably a similar sort of thing. That's what we're trying to do, is that we're communicating in a way which is directing people. We're sort of giving them the flow, we're giving them the path, we're taking them to the place which is going to be best for all concerned. So whether that's the players, spectators, whoever is involved, the stakeholders, let's use business language, it's probably that. I probably never really actually considered it like that. So yeah, pretty question, mate, pretty question.
Let's move on to what we've come to talk about today, which
It's about rugby all day. I'll be happy to do that.
I want to talk today about ethical selling. It's a book that you've read. It's written. It's a book you've written. I had the pleasure of reading it recently, and I just wanted to start with a few observations that I made while reading it, just sort of like high level stuff. I think one of the core purposes of it is to challenge the stereotype of the sleazy salesperson. And one of the key takeaways that I think was, it's really more about having self-awareness and having a propensity to continually improve in your sales practice. And what I mean by that is shifting your focus from the short-term to long-term relationships. Within that lens of ethical selling, I wanted to talk about this stereotype that you're challenging, the sleazy salesperson. I'm calling it that.
No, that's fine. No, you're right. It was written for salespeople to challenge themselves, but also to put out there to customers that actually salespeople aren't like that.
Yes, yeah.
And then the premise is actually pretty simple as to why go down the route of ethical selling. 1, customers like it. 2, the alternative doesn't work. So apart from that, I mean, they're your two main reasons. You can talk to people who are going to be more open to that way of operating. But if you're going to try to do something else, all this kind of funky stuff and Wolf of Wall Street and all these silly things we see, it's not effective. It's not best practice. So yeah, that's exactly what the whole thing was about, but coming at it from both angles. So it's opening the eyes to customers that, hey, there are some or many people who do want to work like this. Look out for them, work with them, and start binning off the people that aren't operating like that.
It's a real relationship driven book. It's all about relationships. It's all about putting the customer first and methods to do that. And I think, I don't know, I think that some people struggle. Let's frame it this way. So many salespeople just fall into the role, and they fall into the role with that same perception of what a salesperson is, which, and they either fall into what they think a salesperson should be without actually taking ownership of the role and finding it's very self-directed sales. It's not something that you learn at university. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. That people fall into this caricature, if you like. It's like, oh, I'm in sales, I have to behave this way. The stuff I've seen on the films, the dramas, and again, it's in a film or a drama for a reason. It's dramatic, causes reactions, and yeah, I think that's where the sleaziness comes from. It's from people who aren't trained in professional sales. So it's quite funny. You see a lot of people say, "Oh, sales, I'm going to do it. It's sleazy, sleazy, sleazy." Push comes to shove, they have to do it. They have to do it for their business. And what they end up doing is sleazy stuff. And they'd be devastated if they realise that's what's happening. But it's because they've rejected wanting to learn how to do it. They end up doing stuff in a way that just comes across as a bit crap. Whereas somebody who gets it and really wants to study this and do it in a way which is successful because it lands better with customers will operate in a far less sleazy way. So, yeah.
So what's your favorite thing about selling?
Make a difference. I know that's such a naff answer. Rubbish. It's like scripted, or that's what it says to say here. But actually, if you're doing it well, you're making a difference for somebody. Now whether it's me selling sales training, which makes a difference to somebody in the way they go and do it, yeah, makes their life better. Or you're selling something which is solving a problem, is having an impact. There's an outcome that somebody's looking for. It's brilliant. But I suppose if you're just pushing stuff that people don't want or need, then you're not going to feel that, are you?
For me, I think it's forming those relationships in between the outcome. Like that's the bit that I really like, working together with someone in a way that feels like you're moving together. And then at the end of the day, you turn around, you give each other a high five, and you look back and you go, we're friends now. Do you know what I mean? Because we've just been through a journey.
Yeah. Yeah, we're kind of like, well, customers are hero, aren't they? So we have got a journey. Customers are hero. They're the person in the sort of the known coming into the unknown, and we're going to guide them through as their guide, mentor, whatever, and come out better side, the other side, they're bigger and better for it. So yeah, there is this kind of journey thing, and that's why the issue if we're not positioning ourselves to do that. So that's why I talk about collaborative selling a lot. That was book one. Didn't call it that for some ridiculous reason. Should have done, but hey. But I concentrate on the partnering skills, which are the sort of the bits that we bake into the way that we operate, and I want to stay true to that. But yeah, it takes two to tango, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to set up to collaborate, to co-create, and to do that stuff together. And if you find yourself in a position where actually the other party isn't doing that, then things become very difficult. You'll find yourself misaligned, you'll find yourself uncomfortable, you won't want to work with them, and it's quite fair to qualify them out and say, no, not going to work with you because you're not my type. I can't do a good job here.
Because, well, I'm just sort of riffing at the moment, but qualifying out, quite a foreign concept to a lot of salespeople. And I guess it's something else that sort of came up in your book is, for me, is there's always a battle between the seller and the organization. The tools that an organization gives to a seller to enable them to be an ethical seller in this case, right? Let's take it back to the training aspect. What's your thoughts on the role of the organization to train and the role of the seller to proactively go out and seek training?
Yeah, I mean, there's some strong opinions on this, aren't there? And that some people think that it is totally down to the salesperson. And to a degree, it is in that they have responsibility for the growth mindset. Well, I mean, they have it or they don't, I guess. But should they be putting their hand in the pocket to pay for the training? I'm not so convinced about that. Now, there's a ton of free resource out there anyway. Yeah, if anyone wants to go buy the book, yeah, please go for it. But I think really the organization should be understanding this is how we operate. This is our way. It is collaborative, and we're going to stick by this, and we're going to give you the tools, the techniques, and all the support to go out and do that to the best of your abilities. Because it's reflecting on them ultimately, isn't it? So I do think the organization has got to take some responsibility in it.
Because I think from like, if someone wanted to approach ethical selling, I don't know, you can tell me otherwise, but my thoughts on this were that you were really pitching the organization to take over an ethical selling approach in some respects, as well as an individual salesperson. Would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
no, I think that's fair because ultimately they have responsibility for people, don't they? Isn't that not part and parcel of an ethical employer that you're looking after people and you're setting them up to do their very best? So yeah, I am saying, hey, look, sales leaders, this is a way of operating. And by the way, if you go into it, you'll find you're doing a ton of this stuff anyway, most likely. Well, if you're
Mm,
not, you wouldn't pick the book up, would you, to be fair? Kind of preaching to the converted, but then just highlighting that these are the things that you are doing, and here are some little shifts that means you can do it even better. Well, why are you not using that, doing that to help your people do that?
yeah.
And by the way, that's you mentioned it earlier. I did take a very deliberate, tactical, technique-based approach on this because what I found was that most people who were talking about ethical sales were talking about principles, were talking about values, were talking about morals, and they were going off up into the clouds in these highfalutin conversations, which actually people on the ground, I won't say don't care about, but don't really get. It's not applicable. They can't use it straight away. They've got to translate that. Well, what does that mean for me tomorrow when I turn up at work? So I went, well, okay, look, here are some kind of codes and principles, but let's not linger on that. Let's go into do this, think this, I like this, try this, and really set out quite prescriptively, if you like, ways in which you can apply it.
There's things that when I was reading the book, I identified as traits that or things that I was doing myself. But I think it's really nice to have that framework to go, wow, I can recognize that that thing that I'm doing now actually fits within this, and I'm missing that. Like that's a really powerful way to look at it. I think it's done a really good job of outlining some of those things.
Well, thank you, because that was that was the whole objective is to do that because, like I say, you wouldn't be picking that book up if you weren't curious about this and to help people recognize that I do that and I do that deliberately and consciously and I know it's ethical or actually it didn't really occur to me that was such a good thing to do. All right, I'll do a bit more of that and I can add this to this to make it even more powerful because I hadn't even considered to do that. I didn't even know it was a thing. Right, okay, there's my big kind of next action step.
So let's talk about. So sometimes we rush to close, and what we're talking about in ethical selling is more of a collaborative, long-term approach. And I can understand why people are rushing to close because the way that sales organizations are set up are month to month, target driven. What are your thoughts about maybe some of the bigger issues around the way that that structure functions and how workplaces, like I understand that there's going to be businesses out there who have shareholders and things like that. How do you navigate that in terms of like giving the salesperson the space to actually own the relationship and not just destroy it at the end of the month when they need to get the money in the door?
Back to my original answer was a customer want and what works. So if you're saying, well, we can't do that because we've got these targets to hit, well, how are you going to hit your targets if it's not what the customer wants and it doesn't work? It's crazy. You're setting yourself up on a fool's errand there. Oh, yeah, well, that's not true, blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, now you've got a belief thing going on that your way is better to pressure them, to push them. You should probably just push them away. And okay, fill your boots, go for it. But looking at, what I was writing about based on the research and understanding, this world of sales, people will respond better to this way of operating, and the tactics, the tools, those things that you do will get you where you want to be eventually. And it is at that pace. Now, if you want to apply your pressure for your own good, hang on a minute, that's a massive trust buster. Are we saying that trust is key to sales? Because, I talk about the trust equation in the book, where we've got self-orientation in the equation being the denominator, which kind of, if it's all about you, it pulls the way in which you build trust down. So guess what? You've set yourself up literally to fail. But some people just won't believe this because of the pressures or because they're not actually having to do it on the ground or whatever it is. Well, have a look at yourselves.
I think like sales is a pressure cooker environment, right? And that's part of it. That's part of it, is the internal pressure that's put on people. And sometimes I suppose a way to describe it could be feeling like a rat in a cage, like you want to do, if you're the kind of person who wants to do right by the customer, you're confident that what you're working towards with the customer is going to get a result at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But the internal pressure is something different. What advice would you have for a salesperson that is trying to do right by the customer, but feeling that internal pressure and feeling like that rat in the cage?
I mean, have a serious look at why you're in that position. And look, it's kind of easy to say, isn't it, from a theoretical point of view? But let's go back to our rugby, for an analogy here, rugby example. It's like the coach is saying to you, right, what I want you to do is X, Y, Z. And you're like, well, X, Y, Z's illegal. And I'm probably going to get caught doing this, give a little bunch of penalties away, and we are going to lose the game. And ultimately, that's going to lose me my job because you won't take the responsibility because you'll say your game plan was brilliant. So as the player, you're going to have to go, hang on, this is crazy staying at this place. Because I'm going to lose my job ultimately because we're going to come bottom of the league because we're spending all the time in the sim bin and people are kicking 3 points every 10 minutes. So why would I want to do that? Because it's going to reduce my value as a player. I ain't going to get picked international. I'm not going to get a new job when we get relegated. Hang on a minute. This isn't right. I'm being set up here. I'm not doing that. Not playing that game, literally. Look, it does sound quite idealistic and principle, but there are elements of principle in ethical selling, and some of that's going to have to be start at home.
Yeah. So talking about where we find ourselves today in an online world, maybe traditionally a buyer would have really taken someone from very little understanding and through the whole process. Now buyers have the ability to do research themselves, and not just the ability, they are doing research themselves. How are you seeing, I mean, you've got more perspective on this than me. You've been around doing this for a lot longer than me. How do you feel the market has changed from the customer's point of view, and how does sellers need to reposition?
I mean, you're right. At one stage, salespeople were the custodians of the information. They'd rock up and it'd be like, "Hey, you need to talk to me because I can tell you these things. I have the things." The customer's like, "I know the things. I know your things. I know your competitors' things as well because I've got internet access. I've looked at your website." Yeah, and now you're turning up being a website. Well, don't, because websites are better being websites. Yeah, so that'll be my first kind of bit of slightly facetious advice. It's like, don't be a bloody website because websites are better. Now, what a salesperson can do better than a website is bring the insight or perspective to the conversation and help people to think. So become something of this sense maker. Yeah, so the pure information is out there, but the research they can do to find out these angles that they can then use in a conversation and use those interpersonal skills, those sales skills, questioning skills to help somebody get their head around something. That's when the customer is saying, "Wait, come here, I want to talk to you because every time I talk to you, you help me with stuff. You help me make sense of something.
Mm.
But if it's like, I taught you once, but you just basically you turn catalog pages or your website, I'm not going to do it anymore. So the salesperson's got to understand how to do that first up, and then position themselves and make sure it's very clear to people that that's the way they operate. Clear in the way that they're prospecting, so that they're reaching out to people. But very much in your world, it's the way that they position themselves through all their kind of their online communication, that this is what I'm about. This is how I do stuff.
Mm.
So kind of sharing those insights, and I think about this stuff, and that's why I'm an interesting person to speak to. And that's where I'd
Yeah.
start to see the difference.
Because for me, I think that it's absolutely right. There is so much information out there that if I am in market at that point in time and I start doing the research, I'm going to be inundated. So my role as the seller, if I meet them at that moment, is to make sense of it all and actually discover their problem and make sense of their problem in the context of everything. That really means that the onus is on the seller. And I think that this is maybe a trait that's really changing from the seller's perspective, that we need to be constantly educating ourselves on the market, on selling techniques. We need to be constantly learning about our customers, about their markets, about everything, so that we can actually have a holistic context to position their problem. Because without that, we're back at the features and benefits selling, and you're no good to anyone. So I really think that maybe the selling role is becoming more difficult, and it's not just about outreach anymore. It's way bigger than that.
You bang on in that. So as a salesperson, we've got to put ourselves more into the customer's world than ever before. Now, I'm not sure that we are preparing salespeople to do this, because we keep giving salespeople product training and talk about our sales and give them presentations with maps of the world, with dots all over it, and like logos and stuff like this. So salespeople don't, but they aren't in the best position to create a value proposition. Or as I like when I'm training people, I'll call that value proposition, create a value proposition, because they want
Mm.
to talk about themselves. So when you know how to put yourself into the customer's world, so the sort of stuff you should be researching and figuring, that is what will be affecting them. Not great. Oh, the intent data says they're looking at my website saying they might buy something. Like, you're an order taker. Different world. That's not what I get involved with people. But it's like going and looking at, right, what are the external drivers? What things are happening in the outside world, the big wide world, regulatory, economic, social, political, environmental, competitive, technological, respect drivers, which could be then having some kind of impact on their organization. They've now got to respond to this. How are they going to respond? What they're likely to be doing? What's the objective they're going to have? And what challenges might that be causing them? Because they don't know how to, or they haven't got the resource to it. And so what will they then be measuring to see whether they've done that or not? If you've got this information, you're in a really strong place to go and start opening conversations with people very, very early in the buying process. I mean, right at the very beginning. Not when they've gone, right, yeah, I've got a specification, I know pretty much what I'm buying. Just tell me the bloody price, will you? Oh, no, let me give you tell me the price. Tell me the price. That stupid conversation that we keep talking about.
Yeah.
And people keep saying, no, don't tell them the price. No, tell them the price, tell them. We go right back to here where it's like, whoa, hang on a minute. We're now talking about something that either I was totally aware of, but now I know you're aware of it as well. I like the cut your jib. I sort of had thought about, but it's nice having somebody thought about it. Or actually, the way in which you've interpreted isn't quite right, but I can see you do your homework and you're the kind of person I want to hang out with because you do things like this. That's where we should be prepping people and getting them better rather than, oh, yeah, intent data, get in touch with somebody, top 3% of buying, whatever it is. That's selling for me, going right back early
Yeah. I
and
mean, because
kicking off those conversations.
I think that lends itself back to the curiosity piece, being constantly curious about the world around you. Because not only does that give you multiple different entry points to begin a discussion, but it does set the groundwork to guide decision making for your customers. If you can understand where they begin their journey to where they want, and like whether it, for an example, whether or not the conversation starts at a technology solution, the answer to the problem or the actual solution might not be technology related at all.
If your conversation is starting a technology solution, you're potentially too late.
Mm.
Reason I'll say that fairly confidently is that they've done work on this already. They've done it without you because you're now surprised that, oh, look, they've got to talk about technology solutions. That's what I do. They've either done it with someone else or they've done it on their own. If they've done it on their own, they've got a pretty strong opinion of how this is going to be and what they're looking for. So you're now trying to reverse them back up and change their thinking. Good luck with that one. Yeah. Or actually, we know what we're doing. We've got this brilliant uh, salesperson that's helping us think all the way along the process here. And now, look, just because we need to go out and get 3 prices. But we're going with them. It's got their spec all over it. And you'll be fighting and getting all, and probably getting dead excited. Oh, I'm on an RFP. They love me. They love me. They must think we're really good. They've seen all the stuff I say. No, too late. Maybe a little bit black and white on that, but in principle, pretty much how it goes.
Because I think like this whole idea of a journey in terms of the sales journey can seem confusing, right? What are we doing as a salesperson? But I think that often when, putting it into this partnership perspective, you don't need to know the answer to go on a journey. You can discover it on the way together, as long as you sort of know the general direction that we're heading towards. There are going to be challenges. It's how you manage those challenges in between and how you overcome them together to get to an end result. And I mean, that's the nature of complex selling, right? Yes, you have to manage different stakeholders and stuff, but that's the nature of a journey. You're not, we're not selling, it's not transactional selling.
And we can pretty much predict that journey. It's like we know there's some kind of stimulus which is going to create some kind of change, which means they're going to work out what it is they need to do. So then they'll start to think about what that solution might look like. They'll probably start to put some ideas around what the budget is going to be, which is then means they're going to go, right, are we going to spend that to solve this? Yeah, we are. Right, okay, in that case, let's go out and start looking for this. Put together a list of the actual buying criteria. Let's start to look at the potential suppliers. Let's reach out to them. And this is when everyone gets dead excited. It's like, look at what's gone on before. But none of that's a massive surprise. That's just the way people buy stuff. So recognize that and go, right, I want to be involved here early on in that, sitting alongside, as you say, guiding them, helping, partnering, collaborating, co-creating, because 2 heads are better than 1. And they might actually be on this journey to buy something they don't normally buy. So they're quite inexperienced in it. You can say, you can slow them up. You can say, actually, no, don't jump to that here. We've got to do these things first. Or it could be something they're very expert in buying. So if you're not actually lining up on that journey anyway, it's like, no, we know what we're doing here. But
Mm,
there's this stuff of people coming in too late. It's very common.
mm,
And it's not something people like to hear. They hate it.
yeah.
That bit I just said about if you're getting all excited about the RFP and they think it's because you think it's because they like you, they'll be going, nah, no, you don't understand, Fred. In our case, in our world, with our company, that doesn't count because they do like us and they do want to buy from us. So, okay, fine. Believe that if you want.
Which which probably takes us back to this idea of value, right? Because I think that, if you're talking about that situation, let's reframe it back to like the beginning. I think a lot of sellers think that the value is in the product or service. It's the same thing. Product selling features and benefits. The value is in the product. But how would you go about realigning value so that you as a salesperson take ownership of that value?
Yeah, just don't go to any product training. No, I'm not, again, I'm being facetious with this, but that's the problem. It's why the salesperson is saying, well, the value in the product is this. Why? Because that's what I was told. And I've learned that, so I'm going to say that. Because the people that I trust, because I work for them, are telling me that's what I've got to do. And it's like, well, actually, no, that's not where value is. It could be, actually. No, I'm being a bit harsh. Could be, because some of the training might be more about value. But a really interesting phrase I heard a bit back, a guy called Mike Wilkinson taught me this. We're on a trip somewhere, and we were chatting about value, as you do with that. And he said, well, of course, Fred, value's a mystery. Hey, Mike, what are you on about? Value's a mystery. I said, I don't understand. He said, well, no, think about it. Because value is defined by customers, like beauty, it's in the eye of the beholder, you don't know what it is. Actually, they might not. They don't really know how to define this. They haven't quite worked it out. So our mystery, us and the customer, is to try to, to solve this thing to what it is actually that's useful for them in their context, and to then start to put stuff together that's going to help them to get that. Now, it could be that the training you've had will be that typically customers we talk to have this problem. So if you go and tell them this, they'll go, oh, brilliant, yes. Mind reader. Not always, though, because in a more complex sale, there's more stuff going on. It's just too simple to rock up and say, right, yeah, what you need to do is this then.
For me, that approach when someone's already qualified this type of business, what if they're missing the journey part? That's the opener. That's how we get them, but then we drop off from there.
And that's why you got to do 100 cold calls a day times 100 salespeople to try to hit enough of them that go, actually, yes, you are right, and you got the right time. Fine. That's a way of selling. Yeah. Numbers. It is numbers. Whereas if you're saying, well, actually, we know this kind of organization will be looking at this kind of stuff, and we're going to put our resource into working this stuff out. And this will mean that we're on this journey together to get to the point where we operate. I mean, again, this is my background. It's complex sales. It's large engineering solutions. It's this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
You know, more kind of the SaaS stuff. I'm not as expert in, and that's why they work to that particular model. I'm not bothered about, to be honest.
I mean,
So
we
people,
could talk about.
I'm only qualifying that. So people are violently disagreeing with me and saying there's some massive organisations that work this way and it's dead effective. And yeah, they are. Cool.
Yeah, because I mean,
Good for them.
I'll just say it out front. Like if you're on LinkedIn a lot, the SaaS salespeople are the loudest in the room, and you should remember that that's the organizations that they're living in. They're very different from most people. And for me personally, I feel like if LinkedIn is your go-to learning, you really need to always pay attention to who you actually learning from. Be very intentional about the people that you follow and why they're putting the content out there. Because if you adopt the wrong sales approach based on somebody that you're following that is not aligned with your objectives or your company ambition, you're going to kick yourself in the foot.
Well, you put it out there. I'll 100% agree with you. That's what's going on. You know, and a lot of the advice that they're giving is right for them in that environment. But it's only one small part. You know, on LinkedIn, it's massive. It's about 90% of the LinkedIn. In the real world, it's about 1% of the type of sales that are going on. So be a bit careful about some of this stuff and some of the very repetitive and quite boring arguments that are put forward. People talk about permission-based openers all day. It's like, well, go out and do some of that instead, is what I would say to majority of salespeople. You don't really need to know that stuff. There's other things that you would benefit from understanding, which would help you engage with customers earlier on better. But yeah, that's what we go with. There are some people that do say some good stuff, but it's disproportionate to what is probably useful to people who are selling anything other than that particular sort of, well, that's what we do and that's how it does it. And if it isn't that, we can't really sell it. Well, most people actually got ways in which they can configure how they do stuff and build a whole value proposition around that. Like, well, that's what we've got and that's what we sell. We have to find those people who are in market now because of the returns we need to get at this moment. That's why they're selling that way. Okay, right, it's correct for them. The game to play for that particular sport, you know?
Yeah.
Other people will be playing a slightly different game, and so the advice that you're getting isn't really helping with that.
So we got on a bit of a tangent there, but I want to refocus.
Good on though.
Value is a mystery. Value is a mystery. You wrote about it in your book and it really struck a chord with me because for me, it kind of reframed discovery. There's like some sort of treasure that we're not asking a bunch of questions. We're trying to dig and discover what is valuable to them rather than repositioning it into the context of, we're just trying to find out how their problems are relevant to us.
Yeah, and the way in which you ask questions, are they self-centered in that Bant? Really? Yeah. Budget authority need timescale. Good, right, now I know. Say, right, if I get enough information here, I can say, ha ta-da, guess what? My solution is really good. Or is it, no, I'm here to help you get your head around something. If I ask questions in a certain way, they're going to drive your thinking. And if your thinking becomes clearer, I actually added value in that conversation. Before we even start talking about my product, my solution, whatever it is, you're like going, wow, it's like scales have dropped from my eyes. I can start to see where I need to go on this. This is awesome. Thank you. Right. No, let's continue the conversation. And I think this is a very different take on what questioning is for, certainly compared to when I first started selling, because it was banned. It was try to get the information to then go, well, guess what? Look what I have here. Yeah. It's no, you're helping me get my head around stuff. Yeah. You're giving me clarity around this. And that is massively valuable in itself. I think we sometimes miss that.
Yeah. Because again, like that, the salesman as a website, that website can pop up in anywhere in that sales process. And you need to make sure that, if you're qualifying them in, you don't want to be just regurgitating what they already know effectively. You want to be positioning yourself and guiding them through the entire way. I think at some point in all of this, we've siloed different sales functions and made a machine out of it, and people have lost sight of the end-to-end process, which I am very excited about because I think it's coming back the other way, where teams are getting smaller and effective salespeople coming to the top because they can take ownership from beginning to end. And in my opinion, that's how it should be, especially in our world where um, in it does no good to the customer to pass them on to another team and another team and another team.
They don't really like it, do they? And I think everyone probably knows that, but says, yeah, but for efficiency. Well, efficiency for who? Self-centered again. No problem with teams, but yeah, when you have a salesperson who's kind of, account manager, whatever you want to call them, they have access to all the teams in the organization, which they pull in to do certain stuff at certain times as people are moving through. But they're the sort of one who's taking from the very beginning and understanding what's the customer actually looking at trying to solve here, or what could they be looking at trying to solve. And then when they bring certain people in, probably as we get a bit more specky, a bit more techie, and then we probably actually bring in some financial specialists in, and then we might even bring in the tech guys back because we kind of loop back round stuff. I mean, to be fair, that's all I've ever known. I'm
Yeah.
biased towards that. It's all the organisations I work with, massive percentage of the organisation I work with that tend to operate that way. Which is how they do it.
Well, I think that's how the majority of B2B businesses operate.
It's just a
Most,
disproportionality of LinkedIn where it's like, well,
yeah.
doesn't everyone have SDRs? It's like, no. Doesn't everyone record calls to make themselves better? No. What do you mean? They should do. They don't have meetings online. They can't. Well, they should do. Oh, come on.
Well,
Businesses don't want to do that.
risk of going down a rabbit hole again. I think that organizations today, whether or not, recording conversations for the sake of improving, sure, but my personal thing is that I think you should absolutely be recording conversations now to leverage insights, whether or not it doesn't need to be to improve your outreach. It's to harness insights for future conversations.
Yeah, I was just referring to a conversation I had recently where someone couldn't understand that some people don't record conversations because the conversations aren't recordable because they're not had on a phone or over a screen. And they were just like, huh? They didn't get it. They honestly didn't get it that people like meet in boardrooms or restaurants or factory floors or laboratories or kitchens, pubs. They didn't get it. And I thought that was actually quite sad.
Mm.
Not you sad bastard type thing, but just like, that you haven't seen the bigger, wider world where there's a lot of really cool stuff going on.
Well, I think that's kind of where I'm sitting at the moment. That's sort of the piece that I'm trying to fill. When I look at sales, I'm looking into the future. I named my business Tomorrow for a reason. But like anything that's worthwhile is informed by the past. And I think that we're at a sort of converging point where people are trying to make sense of the world that we're going towards tomorrow and the world that we've just come from. And absolutely, things like that still exist. We're still having conversations, and probably since COVID, we're probably at the point now where we're having more conversations around a coffee shop than we have in the last 5 years. So we still need those skills to jot down a quick note and understand and remember things. But then we've also got these amazing tools that we can put in context. And so when I was reading your book, I was positioning a lot of what you were saying in terms of the digital media context. And one of the things that I align with is that if you're going to be selling on LinkedIn, you can't afford not to be ethical, because as much as I hate the word personal branding, when you are communicating in any capacity online, it needs to be from a position of authenticity. Otherwise, you're going to be smelt out like a rat. And I think that, without getting too much into sort of starting the buying cycle there, content and putting yourself out there on a platform like LinkedIn almost forces you, when you're doing it well, into an ethical approach. And it really positions you to continue that journey throughout the entire sales cycle from the very beginning, because you can't afford to be anything other than, I don't want to say the best version of yourself, because you don't need to be the best version of yourself, but um, let's put it into perspective. There's a lot of LinkedIn's a very happy platform. It's full of congratulations, rather than Instagram, where there's a lot of people trolling, for example. But there's a reason for that. It's because people are aware of the context. And because you're aware of the context, we're all just cheering on each other. And you see people that actually get it and learning how to communicate what they truly know and what they believe their value is. It comes back to the value piece as well. Like, there's nothing else to talk about on LinkedIn other than positioning yourself as part of the value equation.
The way I see it, it's, do you come across as someone I want to talk to?
Mm.
Because you look like a decent enough person, and what you're talking about is something that's going to help me in what I'm trying to achieve. So that's why when you read stuff, you think, well, that didn't happen. That's not true.
Mm.
I literally don't believe you. So actually, I'm just going to stop reading everything in my put now. Yeah, is one. So from that content point of view, but
Mm.
also you mentioned video. That's where anybody can come across as reasonably knowledgeable about something now. Yeah, yeah. I mean, just ask ChatGPT to write it, not as ChatGPT put it in. It's slightly different tone of voice, whatever. Yeah, and you'll come across, oh, that person probably knows that sort of stuff. I don't think if you produce a cheat sheet every day, that works. I don't believe you know all that stuff, mate. Yeah,
Mm.
you've got ChatGPT and Canva. But when you're going to video, if you're just holding your phone up and it's like blah 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 blah, blah, you think, well, actually, that person can speak about that. I've seen them do it. They clearly
Mm.
do know it. It's not just they've recycled a ton of stuff, which pretty much anybody could have written, to be honest. Which is why I know people find it hard, but I would say try to get over that kind of that camera shyness or whatever, that initial reserve, and just put a little bit of yourself out there on that, because it will do you no end of good.
Mm.
Because people looking at that person just said that. Right. And if you're talking about the stuff that your customers care about, because that's the world you inhabit, then actually that should be reasonably easy. You don't have to be clever or massively funny or anything like that. Yeah, some of the people who do this are brilliant at this. But really, as long as you're just saying the stuff that people who think, oh, yeah, actually, yeah, makes sense. It's what I need. You're in a good
The
place.
part of it that I think LinkedIn's great for is that so many sellers in small organizations especially don't spend enough time on the business development thing. And LinkedIn is such a low effort way to keep your eyeballs on business development. Such a low effort way. And one of the themes in your book as well is continually striving to improve, continually learning. And it is absolutely nerve-wracking, and everybody goes through the camera shyness when you're putting yourself out there. But once you've done it, you actually gain so many other skills that are applicable to other areas of your life and selling in general. Just self-confidence, for example, and really a self-reflection piece, like having the habitual habits of reflecting because you're going to make a post on LinkedIn. These are habits that I think lean in really well to ethical selling and the self-reflection piece.
Yeah, no, I agree. Which is why it's worth taking the effort to do your own thinking.
Mm.
That you can get a bit of turbocharged thinking. But if all you're doing is saying, "Hey, Chatty, can you write me something about this?" Oh, brilliant! Actually, just take the emojis out because I want to pretend it's not that, and you put it in. You've not actually learned anything, so you might not even read it. But when you're starting to put your own thinking out there, and you're thinking, "Well, I need to make that more concise. I need to make it more punchy. I need to make it more kind of well, just suitable for that kind of platform." It benefits you. And actually, when I talk to somebody in real life, I can get the message across faster. I can be more concise. I can get to the point quicker. I'm just better at communicating now. But if you're just totally, I don't want to say faking it, but only getting external help in doing this, you'll not develop any further forward.
Yeah, because, well, I personally see it more as a professional development function. If I was going to be pitching a business as to why should I have my salespeople do this, it would be professional development to allow them to explore things that are going to benefit the company, that align to the company, but you're otherwise not going to be pursuing because you're not interested in that. And those little things are only going to benefit the company. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's quite
no.
a
Well, but then the company say, yeah, but they just reshare our stuff. Well, so they're
Mm,
literally not learning anything, and the customer's probably not really bothered because what you're sharing is probably fairly self-centered. You're just wasting time, really. Might as well just not bother.
mm,
Have a look at how this stuff works, which is, as you've already alluded to, it's massively about psychology and what people respond to. I mean, the top operators in this are brilliant psychologists and understanding human nature and what kind of stops us and why it does. Well, isn't that what we want to try to achieve? Shouldn't we be spending some time on doing that? Because that'll benefit us when we're sat in a coffee shop, in the boardroom, on the phone, whatever. So yeah, you kind of get double whammy, isn't it?
mm.
Double bubble, yeah. Two benefits for doing it.
Yeah. So what what do you think if someone was going to go out and read your book, what's your sales pitch? Why would you read your book? Ethical
This is
selling.
what customers want, and it works. I've said it a couple of times already. I mean, in it, I do, if you're talking ethical selling here, in it, I do talk about the reasons why people wouldn't do it. So I do actually take those head on and then sort of call them out for being bullshit. In a nutshell, it's what I call Goldilocks effect. Yeah, people say it's like, the three bears, it's like too hot, too cold. It's like, when it's too hot, it's too soft. It's too hard to do, it's too difficult. No, it's not. You're probably doing a lot of the stuff already. We've mentioned that. Too soft. It's like, oh, am I going to have to be a real pushover, really passive? I'm going to give everything away. I'm going to be transparent, costs and everything. That's not. Sometimes you have to be challenging. You have to be quite tough. Those difficult conversations are what makes it. So we'll explore a little bit of that. And then, as I've said, the ethical model that takes people through different parts of selling. So it's not a sales process. So if you're fully into your medic or your Miller Hyman or your whatever, doesn't matter. It just sits in within that. It's just taking you through certain thinking areas like empathetic communication, transparency, integrity, informed decision making, and giving you the tactics to do that.
Yeah, great. So we've come to the end. The final question of the podcast. Um, Given everything, your experience and everything that's led you to this moment, what's your definition of creativity?
I'd say it's the ability or the process, ability stroke process, to generate something novel, useful. And the reason I just stopped myself and I talked about process there is because it doesn't have to be something that's purely innate and natural. And some people are creative and some people aren't. There are processes which you can follow to achieve that novel, innovative, useful idea. So Six Thinking Hat, well, yeah, the Orange Hat is just a spin-off from the Six Thinking Hats, isn't it? So there's that, Scamper, mind mapping, brainstorming. Those are things which you can do to end up with this thing that's kind of just a bit different. And hey, that's pretty cool. We want that. You've brought something to the party that's a bit different.
I don't know if you're familiar with Brian Eno, but He's a composer from very famous sort of ambient composer and has done a lot of work around creative process and different games and different ways to achieve musical outcomes, but essentially giving you the tools to be creative. And it really is not just pulling something out of thin air. Creativity does have a process from start to finish, and it's how you deviate from the process that is maybe some of the things that you're talking to there about in your definition.
Yeah, you might have your unique little seed, your thing that you're going to kind of start to kind of explode and work around. But yeah, there are processes which you can follow to make sure you get to this point where yeah, we've got something new, not cool here, awesome. Let's use this.
Maybe that's how a salesperson can define their value in all of this.
This is why, let's train people in product features and benefits versus let's train people in how to be creative and to use the question skills they've got alongside, say, six thinking hat creativity process to work with a customer that by the time we've come out of that, we're in this, whoa, we're doing something really cool and different here, which is going to set us apart in the market, customer says. And we said, well, that's set us apart with you, hasn't it? So yeah, happy days. Or I could have just been a website.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Fred, I think is the best place to get in contact with you if people want to get in contact, LinkedIn.
Yep, that's what we said about LinkedIn. That's where we hang
Yeah.
out. That's why. So yeah, they call me out if you think that I'm any of the behaviours that I said I didn't think were so helpful or so useful. But yeah,
Yeah.
and mention this podcast. Say you heard us chatting and connect with me. Don't just follow. Connect and send me a little message.
Yeah. And ethical selling's on Amazon. That's where I read it. I'm sure you could probably get in touch, or you can buy it on your website, right?
Probably can. Amazon.
I just hit him up on.
Amazon's probably going to be easier for Bezos can have a bit. He
Yeah.
needs it.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening to Selling's Creative Podcast. If you've enjoyed the episode, make sure to like and subscribe. And in the meantime, happy selling.